Good morning everyone, and welcome to this webinar on 10 body language mistakes. Now this webinar comes from a newspaper article that I read in the Age newspaper earlier this year in April the 20th. And so the author was Jacqueline Smith, and I guess as a journalist what Jacqueline did was she researched and found out the 10 most common body language mistakes. And I thought I can use these 10 principles that she's written about and weave my own experience, my own knowledge around those 10 mistakes that she has identified. So the 10 mistakes are hers, they're her research, but the ideas and the information around the 10 mistakes and how you can improve and avoid them, that comes from my knowledge and from my experience. As always, if you have any questions after this presentation, then please send me an email, peter@peterdew.com.au. If you want future webinars, and I will mention future webinars at the end of this webinar, just go to my website. You'll see all the scheduled workshops and webinars. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll always get the future events and my newsletter, and I do lots of tips, daily tips on Facebook, so feel free to follow me or like me on Facebook. Public Speaking Dynamics is my business Facebook page. Got some new people on the webinar. So Peter Dew's my name, and there's my mug shot. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and my passion is helping people find their voice, helping people contribute, put their message across, share their knowledge both confidently and effectively with those people who need to hear it. You probably know that public speaking is one of those fears, and many people would rather die or have a root canal treatment than stand up before an audience. So my passion is unlocking people's potential to stand up, contribute, speak, share, say no when they need to say no. For those of you who are new to webinars, and I see a couple of new names, please ask questions as we go. Two ways you can ask questions. There's a little dialogue box where you can type the question in at any time. So don't wait for me to ask for questions. Just type in a question. If I say something or you want to add, so not just questions, you may want to contribute, or you may know of an example in your own life. So feel free to, at any stage, type in a comment, type in a question. The second way that you can ask questions is by raising your hand. I can open up your microphone. We've tested the microphones, they do work, so if you have a microphone, preferably a headset, otherwise we may get background noise, but if you have a microphone, put your hand up and you can ask the question directly, and that works really well. Think about the stuff that I'm going to talk about, take notes, and in your thinking about it, apply it to your own situation. And one of the best ways to do that is to cast your mind back to an interaction, a meeting, a job interview, a presentation that you've done, or cast your mind forward to something that you're planning to do in the near future. What can you do differently? What can you add? What can you delete as a result of this webinar? So I want all of you to walk away with one or two immediate plug-and-play tips, tools that you can use, that you can recognize that will be of benefit to your presentation style, your communication style. As most of you know, it's the change you make, the difference you do tomorrow and next week that makes the biggest difference, more so than just taking lots of notes and thinking this is a nice webinar. So do think about how you can apply it to your own situation. Okay, let's get started. The first mistake is poor posture. And whether it's at a meeting or a presentation, when you slouch or you lean on a table or you put elbows on your table, straight away it changes your physiology. Leaning on a lectern interferes with your breathing and interferes with the quality of your voice. If you do use a lectern, then the correct way to do it is just have your hands lightly on the lectern. But those of you who've been to my workshops will know that I encourage people to get away from the lectern. If you look at Hillary Clinton over her 2 careers in the spotlight, the first career was as second lady to Bill Clinton, or first lady to Bill Clinton. All her press conferences were delivered behind the lectern. Her second career in the spotlight was as Secretary of State to Barack Obama in his first term. All her press conferences were delivered standing beside the lectern. And just the difference in her physiology, just the difference in the way she came across was quite amazing. So poor posture. So when you sit down, especially at job interview and when you're speaking, sit on the first third of the chair. Musicians sit on the first third of the chair. So that lady down the bottom right-hand corner on my screen is slouching. So her back is against the chair. That's not good posture. When you're speaking, when you're at job interview, sit on the first third of the chair. In terms of speaking, if you want to find that physiology of excellence when you stand up, just back yourself against a wall and make sure your shoulders hit the wall, your back, your heels hit the wall, and you just, if you tilt your head back and hit the wall, that's too far back. Tilt your head forward about 5 degrees. Make sure your lower abdomen is breathing. That's your belly button going in and out, and then just walk forward. You've now created that physiology of excellence and really good posture. So don't back against the wall and try all those things in front of an audience. What I'm saying is before a presentation or at home, practice walking onto a stage into that physiology of excellence straight away. Helps with your breathing, helps with your vocal quality. In case you're wondering how I'm sitting at my computer, I'm sitting on the front third of my chair, upright, and I'm not leaning on the table or elbows on anything, and I put my hand forward to control the mouse. So poor posture was the first problem that was identified in that newspaper article. The second problem was the body language not being in sync with the audience. And if you think of a presentation or chairing a meeting, the presenter or the chair needs to be in sync with the rest of the audience. If you're not in sync, if you're not synchronized, then you're going to come across as being not interested, as you're bored, you've got better things to be doing at this moment. Maybe you're even coming across as being unintentionally coming across as lying, even if you're not. So being in sync is a little bit like thinking of the presentation as a dance. And you need to mirror and you need to match what's happening with the audience. The audience is excited and they're energized. You need to come out with that same level of energy. There are times when you will have to change the dance a little bit, and then you have to pace and lead. I mentioned in last week's webinar around breathing, if you notice your audience is distressed or they stop breathing, you clearly don't mirror that. You need to pace and model calmness and bring the audience into a dance with you. I mentioned that I was presenting at a workshop, and in my introduction I said to the 10 people in the room, all of you are going to stand up today and speak 3 times. The audience, they all sat back in their chair and they all stopped breathing, and I could see on their face that they were a little bit stressed. So before I move on, I have to get them dancing with me. So I had to put in some disclosures, I had to make it safe, and I had to let them know that If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. I'm going to really encourage you, and it's going to be a great learning experience. So you need to have that dance with your audience, and that's one of the mistakes that was identified in that newspaper article. Are you in sync with your audience? Are you in sync with the interview panel? Or is your body language saying that you are dominating, you don't agree with them? The third mistake is fidgeting and big hand movements. Just with the size of the hand movements, the reverse of big hand movements is too small, and I see people do gestures around their belly button, and you can almost draw, a square 6 inches, maybe a square 9 inches around the belly button, and all their gestures are around that small space. The other ones are those people whose hand movements are really big. The rule is, the bigger your audience, the larger the room, the bigger you can use your hand movements. So if you're in a keynote presentation, 150 people in the room, then the big gesture is more appropriate, because the people down the back, the back row, they won't see that big gesture that you put. In fact, if you do a small gesture or a normal gesture down the front, up the back row, that audience won't even see that gesture and it won't have impact. So be careful of big hand movements and also repetitive hand movements. So the bounce, just imagine, put the hands out in front of you and just bounce them up and down in time with the things that you say. And we see our politicians do this all the time. And that bounce is background noise. It is annoying and it detracts from what you're saying. Pens, rulers, glasses. Some people bring up glasses and they do that, they swing the glasses around. Fidgeting with your ring on your fingers. Those are distracting hand movements. So try to avoid those particular body language movements. What are your hands doing? Are they fidgeting? Are they distracting? Are they appropriate for the audience? Bigger the audience, the bigger the gestures. Our previous Prime Minister used to get criticised a little bit for a couple of things she did. One was her hand movements, her bouncy hand movements, and the other one was the bobbing of the head all the time. Now, as a result of that, Julia Gillard didn't always enjoy the popularity and the connection with the Australian population that perhaps she deserved. Now, if I was to speak about Tony Abbott, I would talk about ums, ahs, those kinds of things. Julia just has the hand movement. This particular picture is when Julia is talking about moving forward. And to me, it's a stop sign. So the gesture is not in line with what she's saying. And it's got the bounce, and she's saying moving forward. So just be careful. Don't fidget. Watch out for big hand movements. Watch out for repetitious hand movements that don't mean anything. And if you're not sure, why don't you video record a couple of minutes? Why don't you practice in front of the mirror and see what your hands are doing as you speak? Do you have a repetitious bounce? Or are they fluid, purposeful, and non-distracting? I'm going to pause for a moment. Any questions on those first 3 common mistakes that people do in terms of body language? From a presentation perspective, from a meeting perspective, are there any questions? Put your hand up if you want to open up the microphone, or type directly into the dialog box. And someone's asked about fidgeting, and there is a range of fidgeting. If you look at the middle picture, and in fact those are my hands, there's the ring twiddle. If you don't have a ring, some people take one finger and they turn it around like they're sharpening a pencil. There's the genie out of the bottle, and people rub two hands together expecting a genie to appear. There's the massaging and the wringing of hands. So there's a whole range of those, what I call gymnastics, I guess, finger gymnastics, fidgeting with your fingers that don't mean anything. And the visual learners, those people that are watching what's happening, will be really surprised, wondering, even distracted, why are you doing those things with your hands? If we go to the pen, the other one, of course, is that wonderful click, 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 click of the pen. So the speaker or the person speaking at the meeting clicks their pen back and forth, or they twiddle the pen with their fingers. Thank you for that question. Okay, once again, ask questions at any stage. Don't wait for this question button. Number 4, the fourth mistake of the 10 body language mistakes, giving no physical feedback or having no facial expressions. I've attended a job interview like that, where I'm being interviewed and the panel is absolutely dead face, and you're trying to interact and you're trying to act excited and you're trying to get involved with the panel, show enthusiasm, and they're just absolutely deadpan. These two ladies on the left and right, they could almost be in a staring contest. And if you don't give your audience some feedback with your facial expressions, you'll start to lose your audience. So straight-faced, the deadpan, the no emotions, the blank expression, almost, the frozen eye gesture where there's just no movement, that stare of death. Your eyes, your facial expression tells so much about yourself. And once again, it's the mirror and the matching and the smiling. The smiling is so powerful. The smiling releases really good chemicals that raise your energy level, raises your vocal quality. The nodding as someone's giving you information. The contemplation as you take on a point and let that point drop in or take notice. So really important that you do give some physical feedback or facial expression. One of the things that's really important, in less so in presentations but in other meetings and facilitation, is the skill of listening, and not just any listening. Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talks about empathic listening. So empathy with your audience, empathy with the person that you're working with, empathy with those that are raising concerns within a meeting. You show this with your facial expressions. Maybe at the poker table, you're playing poker or cards. Yep, that's a really good time to have a deadpan face. But otherwise, generally, your facial expressions are so important. Number 5, the body mistake. Number 5 body language mistake is no eye contact. They say that the eyes are the window of the soul. And your eye contact enables you to share your passion, your story, your message with the audience truthfully, genuinely, and honestly. So people that maybe lack confidence will avoid eye contact. They will look above people's heads. So scanning the room with your eye contact above the audience is really no eye contact. It's false or fake eye contact. As you're thinking, and this lady's thinking possibly to the future, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? What do you think is the way to solve this problem? Often people's eyes will go up to the roof as they think, which is fine. But predominantly, the interview panel wants to see your eyes. The audience wants to see you make eye contact with them. If I ask you, where do you come from? What was the secret to your success? Tell me a little bit about your education that brought you to this career. Those things in the past, those eyes might drop down towards the floor as you try to recall. Once again, if you spend your whole time walking on the platform or speaking at a meeting, looking at the table, looking at the floor, you're going to be seen as less than truthful. So eye contact is really important in helping you connect and build rapport with the audience, show that authenticity, the window to your soul. Really important. Just taking a step further for eye contact, when you are the presenter and when you're being interviewed at a job, when you're speaking at a meeting, when you're standing up before an audience, you are the presenter. You need your eye contact to read what's happening for the audience. If you're saying something and the audience doesn't agree, as the speaker, you need to use your vision, your peripheral vision, your eye contact to realize that the audience is not on the same page with you. If the audience is falling asleep or getting tired or they need a break, you need your eye contact to pick that up and to read it. And now you might do a discussion, or you might go to a break, or you might get everyone to stand up. So the eye contact is not only about you sending your message, being honest, genuine, and truthful to the audience, it's also about you reading the audience. If you continually look above people's heads, if you continually look at the roof or the floor, you will not be able to read what's happening for your audience. So eye contact, in my view, really important. When public speaking, even at job interviews, the interview panel is assessing your personality, your honesty, your integrity, and a lot of that comes through your facial expressions and your eye contact. Just going to pause for a moment. Any questions about eye contact? And just one other thing, eye contact does override your body language or your gesture. So eye contact takes precedence over your gesture. So if you point to something, say you point to a graph on your PowerPoint, or you point to a graph on your flip chart, and that's where you want your audience to look, then you must take your eyes across to the flip chart. You must take your eyes across to the graph on the PowerPoint. If you look at people straight in the eye and point to the left or point to the right, people will be locked onto your eye contact and they will not see your gesture, or they will not see the chart that you're pointing to. So when you do PowerPoint, step back, look at the slide, and allow people time to look at the information on the slide. Then bring your eye contact back to the audience and speak to them about what they saw on the slide. And if you need to go back to something, then even walk to the slide or walk to the flip chart and look at the particular point or the year or the trend line that you're specifically talking about. So the eye contact, generally you need to look at the audience, but when you're doing a directional gesture or when you want them to look at something else, then you need to move your eye contact. So classic example. Next time, so tonight, watch the weather presenters. So not the news readers or the anchor news readers, but the weather presenters. When they go to the synoptic chart, so generally they'll look straight down the camera and look at you, the audience, in TV land. But when they go to the synoptic chart and they're talking about a cyclone or a high pressure system, their eyes will go to the chart. Otherwise, if they keep looking straight down the camera lens, the audience won't shift their eyes to the chart, which is where you want them to go. So just watch the weather presenters as they move their eye when they talk about something on the synoptic chart or the temperatures. I could probably do a 1-hour webinar just on eye contact. Bad handshakes. In business, in the corporate world, bad handshakes are really bad. The correct handshake, once again, is the mirror and the match. And clever people will tell you to match the handshake that comes towards you. Those of you who've been to my workshops, and I'm just having a look at the list, probably half of you have been to my workshops, half haven't, know that one of the ways I greet people, this is before the workshop is started, is I make a handshake. But I try to mirror and match the handshake that people give me. And I work in the mining sector and you get some really big, strong handshakes. And so I respond with that same handshake. And that helps me to connect and join with that particular individual. So now when I'm presenting in front of 10 or 15 people, I'm not presenting with a group of strangers. I'm presenting with a group of people that I've said hello, I've greeted them, and I've matched them in their body language. You may remember about 10 years ago, John Howard, the Prime Minister of Australia, coming up to an election, and Mark Latham had just been doing a radio interview and John Howard was on next. And Mark Latham was the leader of the opposition and John Howard was the leader of the government. But it was election time. And Mark Latham, big man, came out of the radio interview, and this is televised on TV, and then took John Howard's hand and absolutely crushed it. And you could see John Howard grimace with, you know, the pain of this really big handshake. Maybe he was trying to prove a point. I'm sure that he did prove a point. But in business, in, you know, meetings, the bad handshake can have a real detrimental effect. So we know about the wet fish handshake, the one where you just grab the end of the fingers and shake. So just be careful. Do you do a good handshake? What sort of handshake's coming? And adjust and mirror and match the angle that the hand comes in. You'll find that really useful. Handshake's not used a lot in public speaking, but as I said, I use the handshake when meeting people. Handshakes are used at job interviews. Handshakes are used at networking events, so it's part of your communication. The seventh common mistake in body language is mismatched verbal and non-verbal messages. In other words, what you're saying is not in line with what your body's telling the audience. I was at a seminar yesterday and the presenter Lou Heckler said that there's this attitude we need to have with every presentation. And if you're ever asked, what's the most important presentation you've ever done? The answer is always this one, the one I'm doing right now. And so is your non-verbal communication showing the audience that this is the most important job interview you've ever done? This particular meeting is the most important meeting you've been to. This presentation that I'm giving now, this workshop that I'm delivering next week, is the most important workshop that I've ever done. So you need to have that verbal energy and that non-verbal energy in sync. So mismatched verbal messages and non-verbal messages. So you're talking about the best thing since sliced bread. You're talking about the way to solve the problem. You're talking about why this change is so important. You're talking about the new health and safety policy within your workplace that's going to make a big difference and save lives. And you've got a passive voice. You've got a voice that's monotone. You're not excited to be here. In fact, you're the reverse. Your energy is low. Yes, you've had a busy day. All of those things will send a stronger message than the words that you speak. Malcolm Gladwell did some research in job interviews. Malcolm Gladwell has written a number of best-selling books. I guess he's a social researcher, social commentator. His books include Outliers, where he looked at what was the secret to success, Tipping Point, what creates social epidemics, what creates society to change, and Blink, so how do people remember, and the most recent book that I've read is called What the Dog Saw. He looked at job interviews, and what he discovered was that the interview panel had made an opinion about your suitability for the job, about your emotional intelligence, about your qualities within 15 seconds of you walking in the room. So you've got a 1 hour interview. You've got a 1 hour interview, and 15 seconds is what they've used to kind of make up their mind. Now, I know it seems, it seems not possible, but I'm talking about you've got a series of people that you're interviewing. They've got equal qualifications, equal experience, and as you know, more and more employers are choosing their employees based on emotional intelligence, those soft skills. Yep, you've got your degree in this and you've had 10 years working in this, so we want someone that's in line with our values, in line with the way our organisation works. So you're looking at their loyalty, their integrity, their honesty, their reliability. If you video record the first 15 seconds from the time someone walks in the room, the handshake, the greeting, they sit down, 15 seconds, then the interview panel after 1 hour, so you've been probing, you've been questioning. After 1 hour, you then fill in a survey on the 8 personality traits of this individual. And on the basis of the person that's got, the best emotional intelligence, the best soft skills, you choose that person. If you take that 15 seconds, so remember you're on the interview panel, you've had 1 hour and you've formed an opinion. I'm now saying let's splice off, take the first 15 seconds and show it to 20 random people in the Hay Street Mall in Perth, in the Burke Street Mall in Victoria, in the Pitt Street Mall in Sydney, and get those random 20 people to rate that 15 seconds of video on the same rating scale that you've rated this person on after spending 1 hour with them. The correlation is 80%. So your non-verbal messages are really strong and people are forming an opinion and making decisions on the basis of your nonverbal messages. So do your nonverbal messages match what you're saying? If you've got great content and you've got low energy and you really don't want to be there and you've got a passive voice, no matter how good the content is, the audience will probably rate you down. They may not buy your message. You're less likely to be influential. So be aware. What's your body saying? What is your voice saying? Seek some feedback. Find out. Is your nonverbal communication in line, consistent, reflective of the words you're saying? I'm going to pause for a moment. Any questions? Hands up. Type into the dialog box, please. And just have one question. And although this slide is about voice, it means other, standing bolt upright with no emotion in your body saying, I'm excited to be here. But with the voice, this question relates, what if you've got a monotone, boring voice naturally? And a lot of Australian men, such as myself, seem to have that rather monotone voice. You can get voice coaching. If you do have a monotone or a boring voice, then find out if you do have a boring or monotone voice and acknowledge that that's one of your speaking, your presentation limitations. Then you can get some voice coaching. Record yourself and try some different vocal varieties and try and create a non-monotone voice. So with my relatively monotone voice, what do? I use pause. Sometimes I speak a little bit faster, and other times I will slow down my rate of speaking. The volume, I can go loud, and then I can also go almost to a whisper to create vocal impact, to create vocal variety. In fact, just on a different tangent, in terms of the volume of the voice you choose, let's say you are naturally a quiet speaker, or let's say you're naturally a loud speaker, you've got a big booming voice. Those key points that you want the audience to remember, choose the volume you're least comfortable with. So if you're loud, then go soft on those take-home messages. If you're really soft, then go loud on those take-home messages. It seems to have impact and it seems to connect better with the audience. So that's a little bit off the topic of this webinar. But if you do have a naturally monotone voice, then pace, the speed at which you speak, the volume, and using the pause. Three powerful ways of creating vocal variety. Thank you for that question. Moving on. Just checking, no more questions, no hands up. Good. And it could be that we finish this webinar a little bit early, but that's fine. Number 8, failing to smile. The smile is just one of the most powerful things that speakers, presenters, that MCs, chair people can use to connect with the audience. The straight face, the lack of smile, can have a negative impact. Are you aware that people who work over the telephone, those annoying telephone salespeople, but even those people that are not annoying, those people that do most of their business over the telephone, are taught in telephone skills to smile when they're speaking. And you apparently can pick that that person is smiling, even though you can't see them. So the smile is really important. Failing to smile during a presentation, yes, there will be moments where your body language needs to match your message. So the serious bit, you may need to have a straight face. You may need to have a more of a serious face, a face of contemplation. But the mistake is failing to smile throughout the whole job interview, failing to smile without the whole presentation. In a previous life, I was a biochemist. Biochemically speaking, the smile is very powerful. When you smile, you release endorphins and serotonin into your brain. It's called an endorphin shower. Endorphins are just a couple of molecules, so just slightly altered from your opiates. In fact, endorphin, morphine, pethidine. Endorphin is a low-level opiate that creates energy, raises your vocal quality. So the smile is really powerful in helping you connect, in helping you generate internal energy, and in helping you create vocal variety. So smile, smile. There's a whole school out there on laughter therapy, and it relates to the good hormones that are released when you smile and when you laugh. I'm not very funny, so I can't make people laugh, but I like to smile. I like to smile a lot. The eye rolling. So this is number 9. I don't need to spend much time on this. You're presenting, someone asks a question, and you've just covered that material and you think this is a stupid question. And then you roll the eyes and straight away you're sending negative information, not only to the person but to the audience. So don't roll your eyes. Simon Cowell, the picture on the left, he rolls his eyes quite a bit. And this one's a picture of when Susan Boyle came out to present. Susan Boyle was in Britain You've Got Talent, and I don't think she won, she came second, but when she came out he just rolled her eyes as if to say, what is this? And then when she opened her voice and sang, he became mesmerised, and she went on just about all the way to win Britain You've Got Talent. But his expression was broadcast right around the world, and he didn't win any friends as a result of it. So just be aware of rolling your eyes. And the 10th body mistake is what I call aggressive or defensive body language. And arms across your chest. You can just imagine coming up to you. You can just imagine someone coming up to you with their arms like this and saying, look, I'd really value your opinion. I'd welcome any comments. Or hands on your hips. As you say, I want this to be a nice, open, two-way discussion, and I really value your opinion. And it's that closed, that defensive stance. The other one is folded behind your back, the one we call Sergeant Major. And if you adopt any one of these as your predominant stance at job interview, at a meeting, or when presenting, then you will be seen as defensive and maybe a little bit aggressive. While they may be valid gestures, and when something upsets you and you're telling a story, you might say, so you can imagine how I felt, and you move into that arms crossed, because that gesture is in line with what you're saying. That gesture would match what you're saying. But as you go on and you speak more and you go through the job interview or you chair the meeting further, at some stage you have to go into more open body language. So that's, I guess, defensive body language, defensive gestures. And that's the 10 mistakes that were identified in the Age newspaper, and I've woven them into a speaking, into job interviews, into general meetings and communication skills. So you use those 10. Which one or two have you used in your previous presentations, or which one or two do you want to eliminate or focus on improving with a presentation that you've got within the future? If we just go to last year, the end of last year, and I've got a question which I will respond to shortly. And so this is from Fremantle, the city of Fremantle. Those people in Victoria, you've probably heard of the Fremantle Dockers. So this is one of the community newspapers in Fremantle. And it's a new code of conduct that the city of Melville has had to bring in to their councillors. These are the elected members, because the councillors have been behaving badly. And if you don't comply with the code of behaviour, there are financial penalties. And this is the behaviour in the code of conduct that they have outlawed. This is the behaviour. Oops, I've just jumped screens, I think. I'll just go back. Shrugging of shoulders, rolling of eyes, deep sighs, finger pointing, turning your back on someone, standing over someone, throwing of documents, slamming fists or slamming the door. This is city council meetings, and this is the behaviour that was going on, to such an extent that this particular city, and this is less than 12 months ago, had to bring in a code of conduct. So just be aware that your body is talking all the time. 15 seconds is all it takes for an interview panel to pick you up. And I've got a question. Do you have any suggestions on head tilting during meetings or job interviews? I do. When you tilt the head slightly to one side, then what you're saying is coming from the heart. When you keep your head straight, then what you're saying is coming from your logic, from your head. So think of left brain. Left brain is logic. Left brain is the judge. Left brain is the jury. The right brain is the creative side, the feeling, the emotion. So when someone is speaking or presenting and you notice they tilt their head, you know that they're speaking from the heart. When their head's straight, generally they're speaking logically. They're trying to analyse and get in touch with their thinking part of their brain. So it's not a crime to tilt your head if you're describing an incident, a problem-solving situation, a difficult conversation that you were involved with, and you're in the, I guess, emotive part of the story. But then when you come to, I guess, the solution or the steps or how you negotiated your way out, then a straight head would be more effective and more comfortable. Not more comfortable, would be more effective and give you more credibility from the eyes of the interview panel. So generally, the tilting of the head, someone's getting in touch with their feelings and their emotions. Thanks for that question. Any more questions? No hands up? Just type in the dialog box. Well, basically, that is the end of the webinar. And I'll take any last questions. In terms of workshops, I've got some upcoming workshops, a significant number of workshops in Bunbury, in Melbourne, in Karratha and in Perth. I'm going away for 3 weeks from the end of August to mid-September. My daughter is getting married in the south of France. Yes, I know it's tough, but someone has to do it. She's marrying an Englishman, and they've decided that the south of France is where they want to get married. So I will be off the radar for 3 weeks from about the 24th of August. The next webinar is on September the 18th. And you'll see that on my website. Just making sure that I don't think you're seeing that as yet. Yes, it's just come through. And it's about how to build credibility as a speaker. And obviously your body language is part of that credibility. But that's a free webinar on September the 18th. I'll have been back in Perth for 2 days, so maybe a little bit jet lagged. But do make use of me on that webinar if you can. And with this webinar and any webinar you register for, if for some reason you're unable to attend, I do record the webinars and I can make that available for you.